Habari, Asabui. Good morning. And that's pretty much the extent of our Swahili that we know. So I know many of you are wondering, how did Mary and I ever end up going to a place like Kakamega, Kenya? And it does start back 6 years ago, but I'm not going to tell you all the history. It's just that we had first looked into this 6 years ago, but we had to kind of set our dream aside. And when I made an inquiry this past January about the possibility of maybe going with Crossroads Springs to Africa, I was given the contact information for a woman named Kara McFadden. And she is a U.S. board member of the Friends of Kakamega. And she is a tripper who has gone to Kakamega 7 times. And she just said to me, you should come. You should see what it's all about. And so I instantly called Mary and said, Mary, do you want to go to Africa? And guess what she said? Yes, I want to go. So we did. The journey there is very long. It started here in Buffalo, where we rented a van, and we put all of those wonderful donations that you all provided, 12 suitcases worth of donations in the van. We drove to Boston, where we met up with the rest of the trippers who were going on the trip. They were all people we had never met before. And then it began the flights. So our first flight was a 14-hour flight to Dubai. And as Mary and I were saying, it is a, what did we say? Pristine, modern, and majestic city. We were able to spend a little bit of time there before we flew to Nairobi, which was another 5-hour flight. When you get to Nairobi, you're really not even close to Kakamega. You are a 10-hour bus ride, which Mary did, or you can take a 1-hour flight, and that's what I did. So we took 2 separate ways to get there. In the end, we ended up in Kakamega, and that's when our journey began. But this story is not about, this is important. While I was on the route there, I did keep wondering to myself, what is it about this place that would make American trippers desire to go back every year, hauling huge suitcases full of donations and enduring those long flights and giving up 3 weeks of their summer? Who does that? But it's not about this journey. It's not about the shots. It's not even about the yarn, although we definitely understand the yarn now. It is about the amazing and devoted 14 full-time Kenyan staff and the 10 more Kenyan volunteers who love their community and the disadvantaged children, the families around them. They work tirelessly to help to better their community and the lives of the orphans and the widows that have been referred to them in the surrounding regions. And it is about the 10 Kenyan women under their founder, Mama Dorothy, who make up the Kenyan board of the Friends of Kakamega, out of which was created the Kakamega Care Center where we stayed, a center that began during the AIDS epidemic.
Lynne and I are going to toggle a couple of times, and I just have to say right away, we didn't sit through a whole service there of church because of time constraints, but any church we went into for a few minutes or sat in on or looked in on, the front rows were packed and the back rows were empty. It's so striking today. I can't help but say that. But we knew it was going to be a great 3-week experience in Kenya when we were picked up and greeted personally at the airport by Ida, the administrator of the care center, and by Godfrey, who is the boys' dormitory overseer. And they joyfully greeted us, and with the driver, they handled 42 50-pound bins and luggage pieces, plus our 14 carry-on bags, and they put them on the buses and got us going, and the sights of that luggage in the airports was really funny. But the administrator later said over a bowl of ungali and some meat prepared in a gravy and stewed cabbage, a dinner we were to see often over the several days next coming, and that had been held warm for us as we arrived late after the 10-hour bumpy drive from Nairobi west to this growing bigger town of Kakamega. You know, we could have sent a bus and a driver to pick you up and bring you here, but we want to greet you and welcome you warmly ourselves. And Godfrey said, we want you to feel so welcome while you're here that we will grow close in friendship. And that is exactly what happened over the course of the next 18 days. It was amazing how fast we became close to 300 children, 25 staff. Perhaps the absence of TV and electronics, the 3 shared dependable meals a day, the tea time breaks. Have you taken tea yet? Served 5 times a day. The evening entertainment, which came from each other. A dance party, a performing song, poems being read. We learned from their lives so many stories. And it was remarkable to see all of the things that you had donated and we carried and unpacked and distributed get put to use with the children. It was awesome. I said when we were first there, when we were being introduced, I am a teacher from the United States. And Ida, the administrator, stopped, looked at the children and said, but she will not be teaching you anything while you are here. While they are here, you will be teaching her. And the children all giggled, and it was just wonderful. And that was was our job. That was our job, to get to know the children. Lynne and I were constantly impressed with these children. They were so self-directed, and they were so happy when we came. Because, of course, we were bringing school supplies, notebooks, pens, pencils, backpacks, things that their homes, their families do not possess. You're not going to go into a house and say, you got a pen I can borrow? Because they're just not there. It is illiterate for all intents and purposes. But we're also bringing balls for them to play with and crafts and some supplies. So it's so fun. And we brought them fleeces that other of the groups that went with us donated. The balls are like gold. Thank you, Linda Large. They get so used that sometimes they get tipped over into the main road, but nobody cares because somebody else is going to really appreciate that ball. And you bring a ball out and kids just come out of the woodwork and there's games started. What we really struck us was that the children never needed a grown-up to start a game. They began their pickup volleyball, soccer, badminton, jump rope, all of their games by themselves. And any child or adult could join the game at any time without fuss. There was no fighting, no being kicked out. There was not one squabble during any of the team games, not one in 16 days. So even if they were on their best behavior, they couldn't have lasted that long. I played more volleyball than I have in a long time. And all the activities were done openly and outside. I mean, even the knitting. So the knitting, when the organization began 16 years ago, knitting was introduced as a way of giving the children a skill or a way for them to produce something and maybe even sell it. And it doesn't always happen anymore, but the tradition has held on. And all the kids know how to knit. The older kids teach the younger kids, and they drop their knitting balls right in the clay red soil outside where they do everything outside. And that's why the scarves that were given to us was so touching, because they could have kept them and taken them to their families or something, the extended families they have. The front yard of the complex is their living room, and it's really incredible. The Children's Day begins at 6 a.m. when they wake and clean themselves, do any laundry, and get it on the line to dry before the 3:30 afternoon rain. It's winter season there, so it's 70, 75. Definite rain, 3:30 every day, 5 o'clock the sun's back out. It's cold for the Kenyans. They wear their fleeces, or some had winter coats on, but it was perfect for us. The children then sweep their rooms, and they're ready when the breakfast bell rings at 7:30. They sit 10 to an average-sized picnic table, and we always marveled that with 5 kids on a bench, even the high schoolers, nobody was vying for elbow room. They just worked in harmony. Even if they had writing tasks, they would write, and I would be like, give me some room here, people. But they didn't have, that's all they had, were that many picnic-type benches. Even after breakfast, the children en masse walk through the compound lawn and pick up any leaves, twigs, anything, put them in a wheelbarrow. It's taken to the compost pile, and every day their yard is picked up and then it's used again. It's their family room. Within minutes, then the children and the staff's day begin in a circle around a tree. They often begin with words like, "It is a new day, and we want to give appreciation to God for giving us life." If school had been in session, the children would have gone off to school at this point and then come home, done homework before it got dark because the lighting's dim, played outside if time, have dinner, and study with a tutor in the evening if needed, and all to bed by 9 o'clock. But because it was camp, the children played games together, knitted, did crafts, read letters from their sponsors that the trippers manually brought over to them, and wrote letters back to them. The older children have had this connection with their sponsors for many years. They can write their letters in English because English is all the education in Kenya is taught in English. And the children learn English and Swahili in school. And incidentally, Kenya is completely Christianized. Everybody, public school, private, takes CRE, Christian Religious Education. If you're Islam, you can take IRE, Islam Religious Education is also offered. There's like 5% population of Islam. And they get along in harmony. There isn't a tension between the two groups. Victor was just one sweet kid I had formed a friendship with, and it was so fun. At the end of all the camps, their treat was a bottle of soda. That's all, not even a cookie with it, and a dance party. And the boys would hold their bottled soda and, ask us to do selfies with them, just like preteen kids, and dance with their bottle of soda. And they loved that soda. And it was warm because there was no refrigeration. It was such a treat. I know Lynne and I felt really special when they gave us the scarves on those nights, but and they didn't have to, again, as I say. So I'm going to toggle back to Lynne for a minute.
So what was it like living at the care center for us? Well, it was most certainly not living like we have at home, and yet we had everything that we needed. We had our own room with our mosquito-netted beds, and we had a few shelves to store some of our possessions, which from what we could see, we just had some toiletries and a few articles of clothing. We had more possessions than most of the Kenyans that we met put together. Our room was on the second floor of the care center, and those Western toilets and showers were on the third floor. And this meant multiple trips up and down the steps throughout the day and night. We were so very thankful, though, to have modern toilets and a shower with hot water. That is, as long as we had power. Showers were often optional because they relied upon rainwater. No rain, no shower. The water was not safe to drink, so you needed to brush your teeth with bottled water, and you must keep your mouths closed during those showers. No singing in the shower in Kenya, no. However, we were so very thankful for the running water. The food, as Mary mentioned, was delicious, but quite repetitive. But we were so very thankful for all the meals that they prepared for us. We washed our clothing outside in buckets and hung them to dry, and we were so very thankful for a young woman named Rachel who showed us how to wash our clothing the Kenyan way. You see, while we were there, you completely understand what it means to be in poverty, and we mean impoverished infrastructure poverty, not like the poverty we have here in America. And you become increasingly thankful for all the things that we absolutely take for granted every day. We also had the opportunity to go on home visits while we were there, and home visits entail traveling to children's homes with a social worker. The journey to these homes is always an adventure, and we marveled at the means that Kenyans go to get places. While we were there, the living conditions are assessed by the social worker. We were always humbled by these visits and by the families who always offered a gift upon departure, because that's their tradition, right? They would hand us a half a dozen eggs or 1 or 2 live chickens, so we knew what was going to be for dinner that night. And as we mentioned, gift giving is a cherished Kenyan tradition, and it would have been rude not to accept these gifts, even though they really had nothing else to share. On one home visit, we met a boy named Anthony, who was told by his high school social worker that he would be coming to high school camp the following week at the care center, and he was to bring his report card and all of his receipts. Anthony nodded yes, that he would be there. And we were thinking, how the heck is he going to get there? We know how we got to his house. We traveled about an hour in a van. He didn't have a car or any means to get anywhere. Only 10 of the minutes in that van, by the way, were on a paved road. Many of the roads and the back roads are completely unpaved. And I mean completely unpaved. They are huge ruts. There was at least one instance where we had to get out and walk because the roads were not passable with a vehicle. But the views took our breath away. Everywhere we went, there's a backdrop of lush green valleys and the rich red clay soil, which contrasted with their humble dwellings. Well, we had an interesting visit with Antony's grandmother and his father while we were there, all of whom live in a 2-room hut with an outdoor latrine, the kitchen of which was inside his home. You were lucky if your kitchen space was outside of your main dwelling because they cook over an open fire. A hanging blanket is the only thing that separates one room from another. Antony's mother, we had discovered, had abandoned him. The social worker later told us that Antony's father, for all of his bravado talk while we were there, was a drunk, and he spent most of the money that he earned, which is why Antony would leave the room whenever his father spoke. The grandmother is the one who keeps Antony's household together. And sure enough, 1 week later, Antony arrived at camp on time with his report card and receipts in hand. Antony wants to be an engineer and would like to go to Nairobi someday. Mary and I were both so touched by the lives of the children that we met and the amazing care that they received through this program that our families decided to sponsor a child through this program. Sponsorship provides the necessary uniform and books that are required in order to attend school in Kenya. In addition, there's a little extra money left over for the family, so if they have basic necessities, they can use the money for that as well. Their homes are inspected by social workers, and if improvements can be made, they do so. Sponsorship monies do not cover the cost to run the care center. All of those funds are being provided by Americans at this time. Our very first Sunday there, we were invited to a dinner at Dorothy's house. Dorothy Selebwa is the founder of the Friends of Kakamega. She is Mama Dorothy, the one who gave us our dresses. And it was quite a feast. She had prepared every special African dish that you can imagine, and it was the only house that we visited that we sat on a real sofa. 16 years ago, Dorothy went to her Quaker church, which sits on our compound, to prepare lunch with some fellow Quaker women. And while on the compound day after day, she kept encountering these children who were hungry, and she would feed them, and as days passed, the number of children grew. Where are these children going when they leave me? She wondered. It was about that time that Dorothy had received a very special message from God telling her that she was going to be very specifically helping some very important people around her. But little did she know that it was going to be the entire Kakamega community that she was going to be helping. Upon a visit to America, Dorothy told the stories of these orphan children in need, and one American's heart was touched by her story, and that woman's name is Suki Rice. And Suki and Dorothy are now the co-founders of the Friends of Kakamega Care Center, and that friendship has lasted for 16 years. The Care Center today supports a total of 300 children and some of their families. 50 of them live full-time at the Care Center, and 125 of them are home-based. 75 of them are in high school, which high school is boarding. You know, most of the kids do not live at home and go to high school during the day. They live at high school, they board there. And there are some that have headed to college. And although AIDS is not a problem today, the organization continues to thrive and provide a pathway to education. Their programming has expanded and includes initiatives such as the Solar Lamp Project, the Seed Project, which I got to go see in person, Women of Power and Healthy Families. While we were there, we were fortunate enough to meet several college graduates who had grown up through the Care Center. These are children who would have been street children, most likely, if this program had not assisted them. Priska was one of the young women that we met. She's a woman who has received a college education, and she is working for Sun King Solar. And we formed a great relationship with Priska because she's the one who helped us do the fluoride treatments for all of the children while we were at the Care Center. She comes back every year to volunteer at the Care Center, and she hopes to sponsor a child one day.
So what were our biggest takeaway, or what's our biggest takeaway? Let us just think about that for a minute. It is surprising to Lynne and me, really, how quickly we were able to put aside our type A American biases. We all know what those are. We were able to stop judging. Why is everything so crooked, Lynne? Are the steps to the third floor where the only Western toilets are uneven, or am I wobbly from jet lag? No, you're not imagining it. Some steps are taller and some steps are shorter. So we think we had it down by the end of the trip that the 8th step had the biggest drop, so we could prepare our gait and the weight of it so that we wouldn't blow out our knees. At night, under our mosquito nets in our cozy dormitory room, we would banter. Clearly, their whole education system needs to be reformed. More critical thinking, less memorization. Where are the city planners? How is this culture even developed? Are the Kenyans using all of their resources? Does anyone own a level? Lynne, do you think this meeting will start on time today, or will it end on time today? I remember turning to Lynne the first night at the care center after 2 days of taking in sights I really had never seen before. Endless stalls with rusted tin roofs lining the marketplaces, selling way more fruits, vegetables, secondhand clothes than anyone would ever have enough money to buy. No street signs, no light signals. I was definitely feeling overwhelmed. Besides thinking, Ruth Shoup is praying for you right now. I turned to Lynne and I said, this place is a mess. Nothing is going to fix this. Not that we were there to fix anything, after all. This was a cultural exchange. And so we just began to live there and let the hum of the prayers from the mosque at the top of the hill outside of town, or the loud sound of all-night gospel music and prayer from some nearby church that came through open windows in the care center all hours of the night, or the sound of the happy, giggling voices of the children in the rooms right down the hall from us lull us to sleep. And even the rooster's first, second, and third crow didn't faze us anymore. And pretty soon, we did not see a mess at all. And by the end of the trip, we turned to each other and said, oh my gosh, I love it here. And I know afterward, I just wanted to be a better person in my community and when I went home. And Asante Sana, Asante, thank you. Asante Sana, thank you very much for helping us to be able to go there.
A world without anxiety. Grit does not have to be taught. It just is. Self-direction, self-care and love, respect and appreciation, fellowship with your fellow man without needing a perfect agenda. This was the life that we experienced. And we began to wonder, who really has all the advantages? Us or them? The Friends of Kakamega is a wonderful project. It is an opportunity to have a cultural exchange. It puts people from a developing country together with people from a developing country, and they get to learn from one another. The contrast is life-changing for both. And in November, this coming November, you will have a chance to hear more about this amazing organization, because we are absolutely thrilled that Pastor Ida from the Care Center in Kakamega is coming right here to Western New York, and in fact to our church, for an evening filled with African fare and a wonderful slide presentation that he's going to present to us himself. So we hope that you are as inspired as we are when you hear him speak of his vision and his goals for this project, which are amazing. God is good all the time. All the time, God is good.